And how could Reggie tell uh the Caden or the Wrap It Up Task Force at that time that Southside killed Biggie in retaliation for not getting their money for killing Tupac? Who gave Reggie that information? Where did he
Reggie
get
made
that
it.
from?
Yeah, he made it up. I mean, Southside wasn't involved. Drug dealers, not murderers. I mean, Keefe was a drug dealer. Have you ever known drug dealers to be like, active shooters? No, they have people that do shooting for them. That's what they use the gangs for. You
Okay.
know, when you know when you meet somebody and I've met them, they have that look in their eyes. They're killers, and you can tell when you've met somebody who's a shooter. And you know what? That's just who they are in the gang. They're the shooter, and they're the ones. And Pyru and Crips, they anyway, they have their designees.
So now real quick, not to cut you off, but
Yeah, yeah.
so once Reggie tells Greg Caden that Southside killed Biggie in retaliation for killing Tupac, and Greg Caden goes on this wild goose chase, he double backs to Reggie and says Southside was there with Biggie. And then Reggie tells him, it gives him Teresa Swan and Poochie, right?
See, you think that Greg Kading did a righteous investigation. I think it was all just
Hell
made up.
no.
I
That's
think
the
it was all
last thing
made
I
up.
think.
I think those guys sat around and they concocted what was going to come next. Don't worry, Reggie. We're going to clear you. We're going to get you out of this because I'm your buddy and I'm your friend. And they're wired in with the police, and it's the thin blue line. And you know what? They're going to get the cop out of it. Even if you were a previous cop, we're going to get you out of it because it's the thin blue line. And it's outcome determinative justice. They're not going to allow anything to happen that they haven't pre planned. And so they're going to concoct this whole thing. Oh, there was a war in Compton. Well, you know what it was? It was a regular week in Compton. There were 10 shootings. Well, there's 10 shootings in Compton every week.
Right. Now let me ask you this, right? Um, I lost my train of thought because I didn't want to cut you off.
Oh, no, it's all good.
but but okay, so Reggie, um damn, I lost my train of thought. With Reggie testifying in this case, right? And being a prosecution witness, do you think that's gonna hurt the prosecution or help the prosecution?
It's going to hurt the prosecution as long as the defense asks one question. Reggie, were you ever a suspect in the Tupac murder? Reggie, were you ever a suspect in the Biggie murder? Because you know what? He has to answer truthfully. And if he could lie, but he's probably not going to. Yes, I was a suspect. So wait a minute. You were a suspect in both of these murders, and you're the one that's telling us who did it? Oh no, 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 no. This is really bad. And I think that this is a smart attorney. He's going to put him on the spot and say, "Were you a suspect?" And and I'll tell you, how is Reggie a suspect in the Tupac murder? Well, the confession letter said that we were handed the gun by Mr. Wright Jr. Okay? Chris Blatchford talks about it and says that Reggie and Sharitha were coordinating, this whole thing, right? And Suge Knight says to me, Sharitha and Reggie and Perez was great friends, and all
And they
three of
plotted
them,
together.
and
Yep.
all three of them tried to plot.
Yep. He
And
definitely said that. And
after
this
Russell,
is why Suge needs to be on the stand.
well, I
And
hope
I
he,
know
I hope he
he's
does.
yeah. I mean, even if he does, if I'm the defense, I'm calling Suge regardless. I don't
Yeah,
care if he's going to
subpoena
be
him.
cooperate or not.
Yeah,
And I'm going to use every goddamn interview that he did over the last few years. Once I establish that that's him, all those become statements.
yeah.
Now, whether they hearsay, speculation, or whatever, I don't give a damn. The jury's going to hear his voice say that Reggie got fired by Tupac and fired back.
Yeah, Reggie and Kenner were fired by Tupac and they fired back. And wait a minute, there's a time capsule, 1998, the confession letter says that we were given the gun and supposedly there was a cashier's check that was given to them. You know what? That can't be too hard to find. Track down the cashier's check. Call the Patton brothers. Call Little Half Dead. I mean, put them on the witness stand. Make them talk on the witness stand. I would. What was this confession letter? Yeah, Patton Brothers, tell us about how did this confession letter happen? I would ask. I mean, you know what? Or subpoena them and do a deposition with them. Do a recorded interview where they're under oath. Do all those things. But
What's the most disappointing thing is that Frank and Michael Moore aren't here,
yeah.
and their the their statements can't be admissible in court because they're not here.
Well, I'll tell you what there are. There's recordings, and those recordings can be played. Those are time stamped, date stamped. Those recordings of all of Frank Alexander's recorded phone calls, Reggie calling him, telling him to lie on the stand. And I mean, let's go back to the chain
So
story.
is that admissible, even though
Yeah,
Frank is dead?
yeah. Well, I mean, what else do we have? But we have recorded phone calls which are not staged. Those were
You
Frank
got the
Alexander.
originals.
Yeah, those
Are
exist.
you going to give them to the defense?
I'll give them to anybody who wants them. I mean, if somebody, I was subpoenaed for those recordings in Suge's case. And so I gave those to Thaddeus Culpepper in Suge's case. So, it's not like those recordings haven't been, bandied about because Suge wanted to listen to him and he did listen to him. And, he started to realize what really happened to him. Now, not that he didn't know, but there were a lot of things that while he's sitting in a cell, he put together. He had a confession letter, he had this, he had that. He started putting two and two together. And,
Yeah,
you
because
know,
for like 2 years, I let him hear all of Reggie's interviews.
yeah.
So it brought him up to speed with who was doing what and this, that, and the third. But you know, he deceived me a little bit, so I stopped talking to him.
Well,
But
you know what? Hey, exact same thing happened to me
right,
because he was trying to cut some kind of a deal with Snoop, you know. So Toy and Suge went to Vegas and they listened to Snoop and I think this is the recording that Suge has,
right,
and they talked specifically about the Tupac murder, and Snoop supposedly apologized and what have you, and then while he was in prison, he was trying to cut some kind of a deal with Snoop, and he called me up and said, "Hey man, could you just back off of Snoop?" And I said, "For what?" "Well, I'm trying to work out some kind of deal with him." All right, look, I don't ever try and stop anybody from getting a check, and so, but at the same time, if you're not going to just be about the truth, then I got to move on.
right. Shout out
And
to
so,
Tori. I like Tori. She cool.
I like Toy a lot, and I bumped into Toy a few times over the years. And you know what? She's always been super nice. And I really did work with her to try and get Suge an attorney. I tried to get him bail. I
Yeah,
brought somebody to the table who was willing to put up the money, and there were meetings that happened. And I mean, I did everything I could to try and help him get a fair trial, which he
yeah.
did
I mean,
not
I
get.
did what I could to help him in any way I could. And uh, Tori, she was just always super sweet, and
I
that's his lady. So I'm not gonna continue a relationship with her. If
No,
me
no,
and
no,
him ain't cool, you know what I'm saying?
no.
But
Well,
she's a sweet person though.
I think the world of her because, you know, look, I've seen it a million times. The minute there's a relationship that gets into trouble because somebody's got a legal issue, it's like, how quickly somebody will bail on their man or bail on their woman over a legal issue. And it's like, you know what? She didn't do that. She stood by his side. And I think she's still standing by his side. And you know what? I have huge respect for that. And I met with the bail bondsman. I met with, I mean, we had many, many meetings trying to get Suge a fair trial, and we're unable to do it because of outcome determinative justice. They had decided that the outcome that they wanted, there was an attorney, you can look him up, his name's David Paquin, and David Paquin was going to be Suge's attorney, and that was all agreed to. The family was supportive of it, and we were trying to get him in to see Suge, and he reached out to the sheriffs, and the sheriff said, "Oh no, you can't see your client."
Right.
"Okay, I can't see my client." "No, you got to get the judge to approve it." "Okay." So he goes to the judge. "Oh, you got to fax over this form." "Okay." He's going to go fax over the form. Well, his number's blocked at the judge's office. He can't fax over the form.
That's crazy.
And then they say, "Okay, you're going to have to get approval from the DA's office." He goes to the DA's office to try and get approval. And guess what? They won't let him see his client. The three of them have finally said, "Hey, you're not going to do it. You're not going to be able to see your client." Now, I was told by somebody at the sheriff's that Suge Knight was handed two murders under the table, which is something that they do. The prosecution tells him, "Hey, here's the deal. You don't take this plea deal. We are going to charge you with these two other murders. God only knows what they are. And so you're going to take this plea deal and you're not going to accept this outside counsel." And that's what I was told. I was told that that's what prompted him to take his plea deal.
Nah, that wait, from my understanding, which why he took the plea deal is because they handed him a cell phone. Like they smuggled the cell phone in there. He was on the cell phone, but the phone was tapped. So
Yeah, of
he called
course.
his moms, he called his pops, he called his sister, this, that,
Yeah.
and the third. And then what they threatened him with was being that his moms and pops were on the other line of the phone call. He told them to give somebody some money for something. They threatened to arrest his mother, and he or cop out. So that's why he copped out, allegedly.
Well, you know what? I tried to tip him off because he was talking to Suge Knight Girl, and that all got out and what have you. And I was trying to tip him off that everybody knew he had a cell phone in there. So I put it out that Suge has a cell phone, and Toy asked me to take down the video, which I did because I wanted him to know that they knew. They knew he had a cell phone in there.
Yeah,
And
it
you
was
know what?
tapped the whole time.
Yeah, of
So
course. Of
they just as
course.
soon as he talked about giving somebody 20,000 for something, then that's when they told him they let him hear it, and that's why he took the plea deal allegedly.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I believe
Well,
that story.
and you know what? That's probably part of it. The two murders under the table, that's just leverage. They're known to do it. It's the outcome determinative justice. That's the system we live in.